Hi, I'm Scott Garibay, and this is my video on D&D Next, the Player's Handbook. This is most important, one of the most important. This is the most important book being written today by any team because it has to do with the future of publishing, future of men reading books, the future of just so many different things. There's a lot of crosses on it, and just overlapping Venn diagrams of what this touches: technology. Um, just a lot of different things. So the biggest issue here, the one I want to talk about today, is the issue that the Wizards of the Coast team is dealing with as far as, and that's another reason why I'm fascinated by this book, is just these huge obstacles that the Wizards of the Coast team needs to overcome. And really that have all come from our modern society and how quickly internet and computers have changed everything. They've really shattered the Gutenberg model of book printing. And so, what do those picked up fragments mean? And Dungeons and Dragons is so critical for printing because it's always been a printed book, and it's part of this special subsection of printing that I actually think that the last things printed are going to be comic books and Dungeons and Dragons books. And the reason why, comic books are very clear. Basically, there is they are the wrong shape for a actual screen, right? So screens are exactly opposite of the shape of a comic book, and they've always been that way. And comic books have value, so they're art, and put into a specific format. And there is a culture, a ritual around how comic books are collected, right? So backing boards and bags, and going and getting them each week. And so I actually think that comic books are going to be around for, I think, easily 100 or 200 years. They may always be printed, and the reality is I don't think they have any danger of ever not being printed. And the reason why is they're talismans. And this does have to do with Dungeons and Dragons, so just hold through with me here. So they're talismans. They hold the power. So right now, comic books, and this really has a lot to do with Dungeons and Dragons, but there are billions of dollars in comic book fiction, right? But the vast majority of comic book fans have never read a comic book. I'm convinced of that. Well, actually, I know it for a fact because I'm in comic book shops. I buy about 4 or 5 titles a month, and I've been collecting since I was 11. And what's interesting is many people consider themselves comic book fans who haven't read comics, right? So I think the companies DC and Marvel, they understand that you can't crush the talisman that holds the power, the source of all those billions. The tip of the spear is the comic book reader, and they determine what's cool and what's not. And that makes sense. And actually, readers are leaders. That's super clear, right? Basically, the people who read comic books, those are the people who are going to decide what is going to be made into movies, because they're deciding what is good and what's not. And then the people who watch the movies, who haven't read the books, are essentially followers. They're getting what is served up to them rather than deciding what's going to be served up. So here's what this has to do with, and also Dungeons and Dragons is in the same boat, where they have a very specific, very traditional format. It started with the first edition Player's Handbook, which is it's similar to the 8.5 by 11 size of paper. It's hardback and very, very traditional format, right? And so and then that format has been and then there's been a transition of what's happened to that format. Black and white, and now almost all books that go onto a local gaming shelf, they are full color, gorgeously illustrated. And that is a transition, because Gary Gygax's original first edition Dungeons and Dragons was not gorgeously illustrated. It's pretty rudimentary, right? It has its own beauty now. I think a lot of people appreciate it because it has its own really unique look. But if you look at like Wayne Reynolds, who is, in my opinion, the Michelangelo of tabletop role-playing games, and the art that you would see in first edition Player's Handbook, they're barely comparable. I mean, they're both created by human beings, and I think it's about the only similarity. The quality is just skyrocketed in a tabletop role-playing game art. So So this is, really a big issue about printing. Now, what I wanted to talk about today is this issue of the play test, right? So right now there's this issue of the play test where players are actually there's the largest play test ever launched for the creation of any tabletop role playing game is going on for Dungeons and Dragons Next. And so the question is, are the Wizards of the Coast guys right to be doing this play test, or is this the wrong way to build a product, right? So this is really fascinating to me. Again, I'm just so excited about the Dungeons & Dragons Next Player's Handbook because we're going to get to see an answer here. We're going to get to see all their choices, and then we're going to get to see if those choices were wrong or right. And there's just so much to learn from, as a business person, and even just as, as a publisher, and even as readers, and certainly as D&D fans, right? So the issue here is Ford said, if I listened to my customer, they would have told me they needed a faster horse, right? This is pretty, that's pretty fascinating. And so the question here is, are they going to be able to create a good game by doing the play test and asking the players what they want? Because the reality is, do the player, if you serve up the players just what they want, is that going to be better than what you get if you go to a brilliant designer like Monty Cook, right? So Monty Cook is a designer. He did Dungeons and Dragons. He did World of Darkness material. He's done his own custom material. He is a brilliant tabletop role-playing game mind, right? So if you set him loose, if you let that dog off the chain, he's going to create something that no one else is going to think of. He's going to create something really unique. And people could hate it or they could love it, right? But it's going to be something that almost no one else, that I think no one else would have thought of. So where are you going to get the best product? By listening to your customers and serving up incrementally Dungeons and Dragons and going down that road, or by getting the best designers you can and having them create something and then give it to the customers. That is the second option. Getting great designers is far more risky, right? But the first one, I think one of the reasons why Wizards of the Coast is going down this road with the play test is because 4th edition was such a debacle, right? So 4th edition, people didn't like it, and they did that. They went with their designers, and the designers were wrong as to what I don't think they were wrong in what they designed. They were wrong in what the most vocal fan base wanted, right? And that's a challenge too, right? Because you hear a lot of people who are on the internet now who are building their products through internet, dealing with social media, say that really a lot of times you'll hear a lot of negative talk about your product, but that may be a very small majority of your actual fan base. And so, that can be hard because I can see that, it's one of those things. It goes back to this kind of recurring message that I have, or something that it's an idea I've kind of working through in my head where people with the worst message have the best distribution, and people with the best message have the worst distribution. It's this challenging thing where, like, it's the squeaky wheel gets the grease. A lot of times there are people who, if people are really willing to be in your face about something, a lot of times they're going to get heard over people who are willing to wait and willing to be more respectful. It's kind of just a part of our broken world. But the Wizards of the Coast guys are dealing with this issue, and I think they're doing their best, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see. And we've already seen what's coming out of the playtest. Some things are really brilliant that have come out of the playtest. So this is going to be really interesting, and this is one of the answers that we're going to get from Dungeons and Dragons Next. And again, if you're a D&D player, if you're a publisher, if you're a reader, if you're, basically any of those groups should really be watching this product like a hawk, because this is all the main things that matter in our modern society playing out in real time. This book is just so incredibly important, and there's just so many Venn diagrams overlapping on it. Thank you.